Thanks. Hello again. So we're going to talk about the roadmap now and give you a little bit of a glimpse of where we're headed. And then Lars is going to come on stage and talk specifically a little bit about Qt Quicks. We're so excited about that, and we want to dedicate a little bit of example stuff to that. You already saw earlier some of that, but you'll see more. Let's start with the market feedback. You just heard it. In every discussion that we have, there are still areas that Qt doesn't cover or Qt is not so good at. And we want to be open about that and make sure that everybody understands what's in place and what's not in place, so that we don't create expectations that cannot be met. If we look at that, the content, so I'm putting now the open governance piece and the roadmap visibility aside. As you heard earlier, we're moving forward with that and have a process where everybody can provide their input, and the best suggestions will count. But if you look now at what's in the product and what are people telling about the features and the functionalities they're looking for, performance tends to be at the top of the list, together with stability. But performance is something that more and more people are saying, can we make it run faster? Screens are getting bigger. The pixel counts are not really at the DreamWorks level in most applications, but still, high pixel counts and smoothness in terms of user experience is becoming something of a mandatory thing. Consumers and business users alike are starting to say, why isn't it smooth? Why isn't it flexible, fluid? The expectation is that every application has that kind of user experience, and to meet those needs, hardware acceleration is really critical. So that's one area. The web is everywhere. Web content is everywhere. If you're developing a consumer application, it's most likely that some part of your content is on the web somewhere. If you're developing in the enterprise, most likely a lot of the stuff is over the internet somewhere. So web is becoming critical, and as you're going towards HTML5 capabilities on the website, that's an area where we are putting a lot of focus and making sure that web integration is in good shape, and the Qt WebKit capabilities are in place. We've done a lot of work so far, and this is an area where the feedback is, and our intent is to improve significantly. Then, there's a lot of people saying that, hey, there's more and more sensors in our devices. Laptops have all kinds of capabilities. Multimedia, we just heard, is something that people start to embed, either through cameras or through access to some of the repositories in the platform. That's an area we're putting more effort in. 3D, generally speaking, lots of people are exploring how they could bring in more three-dimensional elements into their applications and then into their platforms. We have some exciting stuff there that we're looking at, and we believe that having the possibility to explore and find the ways in which these 3D user interfaces will meet the needs is something where is needed in order to really find the right ways to do so. So lots of interest in this area, but it's still quite emergent. And then the last one is the move to touch screens. Multi-point touch, multiple fingers, and with that the need to put on the screen all the components that you want to interact with, and then how you construct user interfaces based on that. Qt Quick is a big part of that, and the gesture frameworks and so forth, and the components we're bringing into that one. So that's what people are telling us, and that's how we're looking at answering those needs. So let's look at each of these a little bit in detail, some varying detail. I'll bring in a couple of pieces around what we are doing, which may not be visible in the daily lives of a developer, but it's good to understand how that will advance the capabilities of the framework and make sure that the apps that you guys write are better. So the Scene Graph project is something related to hardware acceleration that we've been doing a lot of exploration around, and for quite some time If you look at the graphics pipeline that we have today, and on the picture you can see QML at the top, and then you have graphics view, QPainter, and then from there you go to hardware acceleration and actually the hardware below. And that's where we are today. And we're very proud of how we managed to optimize this pipeline. It's performing very well, and we can create fantastic user experiences already today. However, more is better. More power from the hardware, being able to optimize and really getting the value out of that hardware means that some of that pipeline work is starting to become the bottleneck. So we have this project on general improvements, and one of the big one is the scene graph, where we're aiming for a 4.8-ish time frame to bring in these kind of improvements that will really improve how you can use OpenGL specifically to really get the maximum out of that. And that of course works then on mobile and desktop environments where OpenGL is present. So that's a big thing for us, and that will allow developers to create more effects and get them running in a very smooth way, just because the pipeline is going to be so much faster. Another project that we are running in the hardware acceleration area or related to that is Project Lighthouse. Again, one of those things that's not necessarily going to be directly visible to developers, but will be very valuable in what it produces. It introduces a proper, well-structured support for graphics acceleration on embedded devices. It's today actually quite a lot of work to develop and put in place Qt on a device and where you want to use hardware acceleration. With Project Lighthouse, we'll make it easier and we'll make it much faster to get access to the graphics acceleration that exists on that device. OpenGL ES, DirectFB, or so forth. It also is future-proofing Qt against platform changes. So those of you who are familiar with what happens on the Linux desktop, for example, know that the window manager discussion is ongoing and how we could improve the window manager performance on desktop. With Lighthouse, we are making it possible to move with that pace at the same time. So when window managers change on any platform, having what we have here with Lighthouse will give us much better possibility to move along and get the benefits of those changes in the window manager. Web was another point that I spoke about. The web is moving at a very rapid pace, and what we're bringing in with the next steps in our roadmap is a more modular approach, where WebKit can be updated with a more frequent pace than the actual Qt version itself, especially now that HTML5 is moving at a very aggressive pace. We believe that this is going to be quite useful in order to be able to get the latest features. Features like HTML5, Canvas, offline storage, and so forth, and then the CSS3 animations, which will allow us to really reach into the tentacles of the web from the application and get all those smooth transitions going. And then of course touch, gestures, tactile feedback, those kind of things in the web content. So this really is great for developing hybrid applications where you have some pieces developed in Qt, some pieces used using web technologies, and then you can get a very similar user experience. We're pushing the envelope a lot here. We have a great WebKit team. Some of those guys are here. Should really speak to them and visit that session. And we are also dogfooding this part. So here you can see, maybe it's hard to see, but it's the Ovi store, which is a typical application where a lot of the content is on the web, and we're using the Qt WebKit integration there to get access to that, and the user experience is very smooth. Of course, there's some latencies when you get things over the network, but in terms of what the capabilities are that we can provide in the framework, it's actually quite impressive, I personally think, on what we've done, and we're doing more. Then there's always the new APIs, the sensors feedback that we spoke about. The other piece is that the the history and the legacy of Qt is a very desktop-centric platform, and now with more and more devices and needs coming in, under the mobility API envelope, as we call it, if you follow our projects, we call it the mobility APIs, but it's really a new set of APIs. We brought in some new, we'll bring in more. Here's a long list of new APIs that gives you access to features around, how do you manage the multiple radios and the bearers that you have? How do you do multimedia stuff? We heard from Orange that there's some gaps there. We're addressing that with this one. Just general sensors, maps starts to be something that lots of apps want to have access to. So we have now, proper Qt APIs with in the pipeline coming. Camera, some kind of calendar organizer interfaces. So lots of applications are working in those areas. So all of this is, of course, available as information, and the code is available as normal as we develop it. So, it's part of our transparency. I think we're starting to soon see some pretty cool applications using these things, and especially in the small device form factor, a lot of the fun comes from having access to many of these APIs, which we didn't have before. 3D is a big theme. What we're doing with Qt 3D is making it easier to use and build 3D objects in C++. We're also bringing that to QML. So 3D is also one of those areas where it's been pretty hard to do it. One of the things we believe in is we want to make developers' lives easy and fun and enjoyable. So bringing these capabilities into Qt and really have a consistent framework is what we're doing here. It's a feature candidate for the date. So let's how things move forward and we can mature it. But definitely an area that we're exploring. And as I said earlier, it's still a little unclear what all the market feedback is and what do people really need. But we're pushing ahead with this as we believe it's clearly something where user interfaces are moving and using all the dimensions is definitely something that someone will figure out how to do it, and we want to have the capabilities to then support that. A question that comes up a lot and a lot is how are you supporting platforms? How are you moving forward? Last year on stage, I was saying there's going to be more platforms, there's more support, and we are investing. All of our platforms, if you look at what we're doing and how we're ramping up our resources, are getting more love than they've ever had before, and the investments are going in. However, as time passes, some platforms are less in focus, demand from customers is smaller, and some of those platforms just decline, and as we move forward, we put our focus in new areas. So we've been saying it many times, and we continue to say that the desktop platforms are critical. Windows, Mac, Linux, Nokia dog foods those. A lot of other applications dog foods those. The Nokia hardware or the Nokia device platform strategy with MeeGo is also bringing actually a very desktop-centric approach to devices. So devices and desktops are not far from each other. Embedded Linux is also, a flexible term. So those are key areas, and a lot of the stuff that we spoke about now and a lot of the stuff that's coming is focusing on those pieces. So if you think about where we're putting our new investments, it's in areas where these platforms get most of the focus, the Scene Graph, the project Lighthouse, the Qt Quick and its evolution in terms of components, the mobility APIs fit best there, and so forth, and the WebKit integration. And then some of the other platforms get less support. So, for example, some of the oldest 60, the predecessor to Symbian platforms don't get that support anymore. Also, the Mimo platform, which was before MeeGo, is also not something that we put so much money into anymore and so much focus. Microsoft is really defocusing on Windows CE on behalf of Windows Phone, and Windows Phone doesn't have all those interfaces where we could support it. Many things are happening with the platforms, and then some of these commercial Linux platforms are also in that area where we see less demand. So that means that when we look at our investment, and we want to be very transparent to you so that the expectations are set correctly, and that everybody understands this, where we put our money is where we put our mouth, and then we'll maintain those, and then in some areas we'll decrease. I think even if we decrease, just because how we develop most of our assets across the platforms, a lot of those features will be there in many ways. And then we have now a fantastic partner ecosystem with the open governance. So this doesn't mean that these features are not available. It just means that other people will have the opportunity to work on those. Q3 support is something also that we've had for a long time, and we've recommended people to migrate away from Q3. I think it starts to be definitely time. So if you're still on Q3, that's very old, and move, I would say, would be the word for you. And that's also an area which starts to slow us down now to keep that support going. So since version 4.5, we haven't been saying anymore that it's recommended use. So now as we go to 4.8 and so forth, be careful. Of course, our partners, and many of our partners are really happy to provide you services to keep your stuff going also in the future. So it's a choice that one can make. But clearly, from an investment point of view, a lot of the new stuff that's happening is clearly in that device desktop space, where the embedded Linux, the three big, if you want to call them the three big, kind of consumer desktop platforms, as well as then Symbian Migo, are at center of our attention. Okay. Now, this was, of course, is not enough to satisfy your unlimited hunger for where we're going. So note this down. The 3D stuff is in the labs. WebKit is here in room A today. I think Simon is giving that presentation. There's the new APIs tomorrow, as well as Lighthouse tomorrow. So we'll be able to answer most of your questions around specifics of these PCs in those sessions. So if you have interest in any one of these, grab the right people and go to these sessions. We'll also have a little bit of question and answer at the end of this session also, just in case there's some general questions. But I really warmly recommend that you go and speak to the guys in this room to really get to the bottom of these things. And with that, I think it's time to get Lars on stage and talk a little bit about the evolution in Qt. So welcome, Lars.